Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another pre-season 7 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today, we're going to cover Ziggs.
This'll be a blast.
If you'd like to find more of my content, you guys can visit my website, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. All of those will be down in the video description. I also have a new Discord, so if you'd like to hop in and chat or just ask anything League of Legends related, please feel free to stop by. I do also have a Patreon, so that and everything else, plus the timestamps for this guide will also be down in the video description. Now let's hop right into our Ziggs guide with his pros and cons. Ziggs is a champion with a ton of AoE damage, which of course makes him very, very easy to farm on. His ultimate then of course is AoE as well, has a very long range, and can be very devastating, especially if people are in the epicenter. He does have a decent built-in escape, but to be fair, it does take a little bit to get used to, and he also has very great poke damage, especially from his Q. Your satchel charge, which you can use to escape, can also be used to chase opponents, which also gives him some decent chasing potential. Ziggs, however, is a very skill shot reliant champion, and every single ability in your kit is technically a skill shot. You are a very, very squishy champion, and as I said, your W ability does take some time to learn, which is your built-in escape. Your ultimate then has a pretty long delay as well, and it does notify the enemy where it is going to drop, so sometimes they have enough time to completely move out of it, and it does no damage at all. The trade-off, however, is the fact that you can hit an entire team with it and do an absolute ton of damage, which makes Ziggs very effective in a wombo combo that has something like an Amumu ult, or even a Galio ult, so they can hold a team there, and you can land your ultimate rather easily. For my Masteries, I like to go 12 Ferocity and 18 Cunning, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as my Keystone Mastery. It'll add a pretty significant amount of damage into your combos, and it's really easy to get off with Ziggs' kit. I also like to go for Meditation instead of Merciless, just so I have a bit more mana sustain and I can really harass the enemy champion. Other than that, the Masteries are pretty much the default every mid laner uses that takes Thunderlord's Decree. For my runes, I go for Magic Penetration Reds, Scaling Health Yellows, a mix of Scaling Cooldown Reduction and Scaling Ability Power Blues, and Ability Power Quints. In my normal item build, I'll only get 30% CDR, which is from the Morello Nomicon and the Zonias. So of course these scaling cooldown reduction runes will give us that extra 10%, but you do also have the option of going for Ionians or getting Abyssal Scepter or Lichbane in your build. If you do this, then skip the scaling cooldown reduction and go for either Ability Power or Magic Resist. In almost all cases, getting the Ability Power will be perfectly fine because you do have a relatively long range on Ziggs. For your summoner spells, you'll first want to pick up Flash for its reliable escape and chase potential. As for your second summoner, well, you have a lot of different viable picks. Ghost is definitely my favorite on Ziggs, and if you want more mobility and the ability to kite rather easily, then you'll want Ghost. If you're looking for some more kill potential in the mid lane, then you'll want to take Ignite. If you then want a low cooldown defensive summoner, Barrier is excellent and it can save you multiple times in a single game. You could also take Teleport if you want to gank without roaming, or if you want to split push, but I don't take it too much myself because you can use your ultimate from a rather long range. Exhaust is something you'll definitely want to consider though if you're against something like Talon or Zed, something that's a high damage assassin, so you can reduce their damage by a significant margin. Now Cleanse would be a pretty decent pick as well if you're against something like Cassiopeia or Twisted Fate, something that has a stun that can really get you killed. Now let's move on to your abilities, starting with your passive, Short Fuse. Ziggs' basic attacks periodically deal between 20 and 160 based on level, plus between 30 and 50% AP, bonus magic damage which is doubled against enemy structures. Short Fuse's cooldown is reduced by between 4 and 6 seconds whenever Ziggs uses an ability, and it has a static cooldown of 12 seconds. So this is a pretty nice passive because last hitting will be easier when you have it, and you can also get a nice chunk of extra harassment on the enemy champion whenever you have this bomb. In your combos, you want to add a basic attack periodically whenever you have this off cooldown. It'll add a ton of extra damage and make your combos much more effective. In the lane phase, try to hit the enemy champion with this whenever you can to do a nice extra chunk of damage. Now your Q ability, Bouncing Bomb. Ziggs throws a bouncing bomb to the target area, which bounces up to twice. The distance of each bounce is dependent on how far the bomb was originally thrown. If the bomb comes near an enemy or reaches the end of its trajectory, it explodes, dealing magic damage to all nearby enemies. So this ability is fantastic for harassing the enemy champion because you can even throw it over minions, and even if they are behind, it will still hit them. That's pretty much how you harass in lane. You throw this at the enemy champion as much as you can, mix in some auto attacks, and use your other abilities whenever you can. It's also great for doing AoE damage onto minion waves, and it can really push the lane if that's something you want to do. It's easily our best ability, so we max it first. Now let's move on to our W, Satchel Charge. Ziggs flings an explosive charge to the target area which reveals its surroundings. After 4 seconds or upon reactivating Satchel Charge, the charge explodes, dealing magic damage to all enemies around it and knocking them away. Ziggs can also use the explosion to dash away but takes no damage from it, and Satchel Charge demolishes turrets below a health threshold. So this charge has 2 uses. You can use it offensively and defensively. I primarily use it as a defensive escape, but if you are going for an all-in, you can use Satchel Charge to knock people into additional mines from your E ability, which we'll cover in just a second. The one problem though, if you are using it offensively, is it does have a rather long cooldown, so if somebody comes in to gank you afterwards, you're not really going to be able to escape. You can even use it to escape and hit the enemy at the same time, as long as you drop it in between both of you and you are in the range of the explosion. Now your last basic ability, your E, Hexplosive Minefield. Ziggs scatters a cluster of proximity mines at the target area, which lasts up to 10 seconds and upon contact with an enemy, deals magic damage and slows them for 1.5 seconds. Enemies take 40% damage from each mine they detonate beyond the first. So this is yet again another ability you can use either offensively or defensively. When you're going for an all-in kill, this is a great ability to drop under the enemy champion since they will take a lot of damage and they won't be able to move away from you that quickly. You can drop this under the enemy champion, then Satchel Charge to move them towards you and follow up some damage from your Q. In teamfights, this can be great used defensively and can really help peel for yourself or an AD carry. Whenever the enemy champion comes towards you, they will be hit by these minefields, be slowed, and be much easier to kite. Alright, now let's finish off our abilities with our ultimate Mega Inferno Bomb. Ziggs deploys his ultimate creation, the Mega Inferno Bomb, hurling it to the target area and dealing magic damage to all enemies caught in the blast, increased by 50% against targets in the epicenter. So, this ability has a 5,300 range, which is great for roaming because you only have to go partway up or down river to hit either lane. Unfortunately, the throw time is rather long and sometimes it's going to be really hard to hit the enemy champions. This of course means getting them in the epicenter for that enhanced magic damage will be even harder. Fortunately, you do have abilities that can keep them in the area. Your mines can slow them, and your Satchel Charge can knock them back into the area. This ultimate of course is going to get a hell of a lot better when you have stuff you can combo it with, like a Moomoo's ultimate. When the enemy is running away, you can drop this to the location they're running to, so they either have to go into it or turn around and die to you anyways. For our skill order, you'll want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. We then of course max our Q ability first because it's great for harassing the enemy champion, pushing the minion wave, or just last hitting. Now either your E ability or your W ability is viable to max second. I generally max my E second because of the slow percentage on the ability scaling, but you could max your W second instead for its reduced cooldown. The choice is up to you, but generally I just take 1 point into my W at level 2, and then max my Q, and then E. For Ziggs' all-in combo, you first want to drop your Hexplosive Minefield under the enemy. Then use your Satchel Charge to knock them back towards you into additional mines. Since the enemy will be slowed, land your Mega Inferno Bomb and land your Bouncing Bomb on the enemy for some extra damage as well. Keep in mind you'll also want to be auto-attacking when you do have your short fuse to do some extra damage into that combo. Now you don't really have an early game harass combo, you just need to harass them with your Bouncing Bomb and auto attacks, and use your Hexplosive Minefield for additional damage when the enemy is out of position. Your Bouncing Bomb and short fuse will do enough damage on their own, and you won't even really have to worry about your W and E to actually bully the crap out of the enemy champion. When you're in the lane phase, if the enemy champion struggles at last hitting under tower, then you'll want to use your AoE to shove the minion wave and get an early CS advantage. If you are doing this, then you'll want to make sure you use your wards and hold on to your Satchel Charge because the enemy jungler will probably come to gank you at some point and you do need the ability to escape. If you're against weak early game champions that don't have sustain, use your mana to harass them down as much as possible with your Bouncing Bomb and of course your passive. Remember that you can use your Satchel Charge to knock them back into you for an easy kill when they are low. Finally, you'll want to roam up and down river when the lane is pushed so you can help your team finish off low enemies with your Mega Inferno Bomb. You'll want to try to poke down the enemy team before a full-blown team fight starts. Your entire kit has a pretty decent range, so use it to an advantage before the fight even breaks out. During the actual fight, you'll want to use your Hexplosive Minefield and Satchel Charge to prevent the enemy from getting onto you or another high kill priority target like your AD carry. Try to use your Mega Inferno Bomb to either pick off a low health enemy during the fight or to use it on as many targets as possible. It does flat damage and there's no % health damage on it, so it doesn't really matter too much when you use the ability. Finally, when you see an opportunity, use your all-in combo to delete a target out of position. Now we're going to look at some hard matchups, and first up is Cho'Gath. He's a pretty hard matchup because he has a ton of passive sustain from his carnivore and also a ton of wave clear, so you can't really push him in with your AoE. At level 6, he's pretty much just as deadly as Annie because if he lands his Rupture, he can kill you with a Feral Scream and a Feast. You'll want to use your range advantage and keep at a distance. Now against Kassadin, you'll want to deny his farm as much as possible early on in the lane phase. Later on in the game though, he can start trading pretty decently when he utilizes the shield from his Null Sphere. He's then going to be able to use Rift Walk to dodge your abilities and then all-in you when they're in cooldown, so try not to waste them. Kassadin's a champion who likes to roam around a lot during the game, so try to follow him and use your Mega Inferno Bomb to help your team when he is there. Now let's cover two more, and first this time is LeBlanc. Against LeBlanc, you want to stay at a pretty safe distance and farm with your Bouncing Bomb. LeBlanc can easily dodge all of your abilities, and her kit is great at bursting you down. Now against LeBlanc, I'd recommend shoving the minion wave under her tower and then start roaming. You don't really want to sit in lane so she has the chance of bursting you down and snowballing. Alright, so last here is Corki, and he's a champion who can farm from a very safe distance once he does have his Missile Barrage. He's also an incredibly bursty mid laner, so you'll want to keep at a pretty decent distance yourself as well and avoid his poke when he is level 6. Whenever he picks up one of his packages, you have to be even more careful because the burn damage it does is really high and he can easily kill you with it. Of course, he will still have his Valkyrie available, and he can even tower dive you and simply just jump out afterwards. Alright, now for the item build, and you want to start with a Doran's Ring, Health Potion, and a Warding Totem. Now if you're against a high AD damage champion like Zed or Talon, then you'll want to go for an early Seeker's Arm Guard to start stacking some armor, and then go for your core build. So our core build is a Morello Nomicon, Rabadon's Deathcap, and a Void Staff. You'll have 20% CDR right off the bat, some decent mana sustain early on in the game, and an absolute ton of ability power. Before you get the Rabadon's Deathcap, you'll want to go for either a Luden's Echo or a Rylai's Crystal Scepter. Luden's Echo is a great item early on because it really increases your burst damage, and you will get some extra movement speed, making your roaming a little bit quicker. If the enemy team lacks some hard engages, then you could go for a Rylai's Crystal Scepter and basically kite all day long on Ziggs. Of course, you already do have your Minefield, but adding a Rylai's onto your other abilities will make it extremely difficult for the enemy to get on top of you if they have no hard engage. For our boot options, we then have the Sorc Shoes or the Ionians. I basically always get the Sorc Shoes myself for some early magic penetration, but the 10% CDR on Ionian boots are great as well. Now for our item pool, we first have the Zhonya's, which is definitely one of my favorite items on Ziggs, and basically every other AP mid laner out there. You get some nice ability power in armor, but that Stasis Activate is insanely strong, and it can really save your life. Now, Lichbane Ziggs used to be a very popular thing back in the day and made his burst damage absolutely ridiculous, and it's still pretty decent on Ziggs now. So of course, if you want to be a little bit burstier and you do need 10% CDR, a Lichbane is definitely worth getting. If you're then against a tanky team that's going to have a lot of health, a Liandry's is a great way to add a nice burn damage and can really add some extra damage into your combos. As always, against an AP team, Abyssal Scepter is great to pick up some magic resist and also increase your damage. Since Ziggs has a rather long-range ultimate, you could get a Magi's and play him a little bit like a Lux. Roam up and down river, picking up assists and kills, and get that Magi's stacking to be insanely strong in that mid-game. Rod of Ages is also a viable pick if you do need a health pool early on, but I don't get it too much myself. If I want a health pool, I'll just get a Rylai's Crystal Scepter second myself. Then, as always, Guardian Angel, great way to get some magic resist and armor, and be able to come back to life if you do end up dying. But for my normal full build, I'll take that core build and add a Luden's Echo early on, get those Sorc Shoes, and then finish off with a Zhonya's. This will give you an absolute ton of ability power, some nice penetration, and of course that Zhonya's Activate. You of course end up with 30% CDR, and when we do combine it with our runes, boom, 40%. But that, ladies and gentlemen, covers everything I've got for mid lane pre-Season 7 Ziggs. Don't forget to check out the video description below for a link to all of my social medias, and keep in mind that Twitter is where you can go for my Riot Point giveaways. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching the guide. I hope you guys did enjoy it and found something useful, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace. Son.
Make money, take money, earn, crack money, drug money, bill money. Heard they got life for me, how they got life for me when they took that from me. Since I had my nose, yeah.